Did I get the brand right?
You got it right. I'm so proud of you, even that you're, at least like trying to say my full name.
Well, how many times have how many times have you explained two names, and is it super annoying, like explaining what is the 182 and Blink 182? We're tired of explaining what it is, or do you not mind explaining why you go by two names, which is totally fine. I mean, there's Marianne and all kinds of names that are two words. But what's the story there, and are you tired of telling it?
All right. So the story is that if I would be tired, it would be my own fault because I literally created this. So basically what happened is that 10 years ago I moved abroad for the first time. And in the beginning it was kind of fun when people were trying to say Nienke, Nienke, Nienke or whatever. But because Nienke is a Dutch name. So that's my real name. And then when I moved to Italy, and not to say that, nothing against Italians, but they were saying Nienke, Nienke, and it sounded just so ugly. So I was like, no. But in Italian, if they say Nina, they say Nina, and that sounds so cute. So I was like, from now on, I'm Nina, because I was going to stay there for a while. And then I moved to the
Mhm.
Philippines, and then it was still Nina. And then at one point, I don't know, someone said to me, why don't you do like Nienke because it's nicer? And then I was like, yeah, now I have Nina. And then I was like, okay, let's do Nienke Nina. That's it. So you can call me Nienke, you can call me Nina, or Nienke Nina. I usually listen to Nina because it's kind of my dad that would be like, Nienke, like really bad, like mad. And then
Mhm.
I'd be like, ooh, yep, did something wrong. So that's the story.
So Ninka Nina or Ninka Nina, but never Nienke. Never
Exactly.
that one.
Right? And it's a funny thing when you live abroad. Oh my God. I know that
Yeah.
a lot of people that live abroad, like digital nomads, people that like to work remotely, whatever, they all like, if you have a funny, like a not so internationally, proof name, then yeah, you're going to have all this weird stuff, but it's fun.
Yeah. Well, I don't have quite the same situation, but my name is Curtis, and it has the North American R, like Curtis. And so
Hmm.
there's a lot of there's a lot of places around the world that don't have that sound, like almost everywhere except, North America. Like even in Western European countries, it might be like Curtis or Curtis. But then in France, I found there's just absolutely no way for them not to say Curtis. And
Curtis,
it's just
Curtis.
Curtis. And so it was just kind of one of those things where, you don't want to be arrogant, like you have to say it the right way. But it seemed like like the cur sound is just too many hoops for so many um, different Western European countries to say. And so in
Yeah.
France, I was Celtis, and I'm happy to be whatever. But I'm sure I don't run into the same amount of confusion that you do. But it's actually very clear. You can say one, you can say the other, you can say both. How long
Yeah.
have you been a digital nomad? And I know it's like a boring question, but we'll move on from it quickly. But I just wanted to kind of orient myself.
Love it. I mean, I always ask this question on my
You asked this
podcast as well,
question?
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I always ask, how long have you
yeah,
been nomading? Trying to get
yeah,
that verb in the dictionary, nomading. That's what we're doing. Like we're Googling these days stuff. But
yeah. I like it.
all right. So on the name thing, just a quick note. If you have
Hmm.
some sort of name, like leverage it, because for me it's been an icebreaker. When people see my name tag, they really go like, "What?" And then I just talk about stuff, and it's like, it's a great icebreaker. Anyhow, I have been living abroad for 10 years. And nomading, I don't really have a date. It just kind of happened. I didn't know that I was nomading, and then at one point I figured it out. That's also when I started Digital Nomads Daily. Yeah, but I don't really have a date, but I would say more or less 5 years. So way pre-pandemic.
Sorry, what's the difference between, you said 10 years and then 5 years? What's 10 years? What's 5 years?
So 10 years living abroad. So I
I
moved
see.
abroad as a student.
I
And
see.
I find it like some people say, yeah, I've been nomading for 10 years. But so this is what I hear on my podcast, right? But then wait, are you full-time nomading? Are you part-time nomading? Was it just like a one-time thing that you did abroad and then you moved? Like, so there's not one type of thing. So yeah, I always say 10 years abroad, 5 of those I've been literally nomading, location independent. Yeah, just suitcase, laptop, let's go.
If you could go back 5 years then, maybe to the start of nomading as a verb and identifying as a nomad, what do you think you'd do differently? If you could just go back to, I guess, what is it, 2018?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge at that time was that I wasn't sure what I was doing, right? These like I see two things. Like back then it wasn't productized yet. Like now it's almost like buy this course online and then you can become a digital nomad. So it's very productized these days. Like the vision is put in a product and that's what you can buy in a course or whatever. And that's the lifestyle as well. So actually what I love about the way it happened to me is that I just had to fall flat on my face, not knowing anything, just had like travel issues, not knowing where to go, ran out of money, like all that kind of crap. So you become really, really, tough in a way and resilient, not more resilient than tough, I guess. So, but then what I would definitely would wanted to have done differently just to save me a little bit of time, probably a lot of money is to like accept that I don't know everything and that sometimes it's good to take a course or to like to not take too much risk, but I took a lot of risk all the time. It was very stressful. Like the coconuts really don't taste so good if you don't have money coming in, like you don't have a lot of money on your account anymore, you're stressed about work, like you don't know what to do. That's then it looks so great on Instagram and it's just like it doesn't feel good. So yeah, I would be more conscious, I guess.
And you do marketing in an agency format. Did that start at the same time 5 years ago? Did you get into nomading at the same time as becoming a marketing professional, uh, in a freelancer agency format?
Yeah, so long journey as well. I'm kind of like a late bloomer with stuff, I guess, but I'm fine with that. So what happened to me, and I know that a lot of people have this as well, is that so these days when you see people talk about their hero stories, they have more like a storyline of like, this is what I did in 30 days and then this is the big result I achieved, right? Or like something
Mhm.
that went really fast with little steps. Now I never sell that story when I'm like focusing on my own marketing, because honestly it's been a really long journey of doing a lot of internships growing up because I wasn't so book smart. So I was just more like, put me in the place and I will figure it out kind of girl. To so doing the internships, like working for free, working for very low pay, work in a startup environment where you have to be super hands on. And I have always been in marketing, in content and community. So those were kind of like my areas. Also like working with tech and like ad setup, automations, like those kind of things. But it never was like a one thing. It was always like different things or projects or stuff that I was pursuing. And then actually last year I was building funnels in a company, marketing campaigns, marketing funnels. I was working
Mhm.
remotely, so I have been a freelancer and I've been a remote employee or contractor, and it was a toxic environment. And that's when I thought, I don't like marketing, I hate it, I'm not good at it. So important note here, it's really important that you are working in a right environment, also remotely. Like it's I think even tougher when you're remotely. So it wasn't right for me. All good. So I left and I wanted to switch careers, leave marketing kind of behind. That didn't go well. I think the universe was just like trying to keep me at where I was supposed to be, so blocking all the opportunities. And then I did a project for a friend slash someone that was on my podcast, and it was good, and I'm still there. I'm still doing that, and that's how I started my agency. So sorry, that's a very long answer, but a few things. Number one, I didn't start it overnight. Definitely not 5 years ago, but I was like collecting the bits and the pieces and developing myself. Number two, I think it's it I want to be honest about that as well. I don't need to like make it any bigger or crazier than it is. Like, yeah, it's just not an overnight thing. That's not sexy, but hey, I learned a lot. And yeah, and now I have my agency, and it's a lot of fun. And I have a no dick phase policy, so everyone who is shitty, just stay out of my space. So I'm also building not just an agency; it needs to be a really nice, place where people can come to work, where they can be creative, where our clients are happy, and that's what it's for me all about right now.
What's one specific way that a client can be a dick or an asshole, or that toxicity can seep into a relationship? Like, what is a specific reason you might fire a client to preserve your values, um, or just peace of mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, it's really important that we're flexible. I do not appreciate it when clients tell me, but I just saw you on the beach. I'm like, yeah, I have a life. Like, if you look at my Instagram, I might be at the beach. Like, I think flexibility is super important. I think it's super important. And this is not in order, by the way. I think
Hmm.
also I lead with empathy and kindness. So I've been working on this really hard, and still am setting my boundaries for myself, for the team. And it's really important that we communicate in kindness. Like, no one is more than the other. The clients aren't higher than me, and I'm not higher than them. We're like, we're equals. We're trying to make business. We're trying to help each other, and it's that is a two-way street. And then the other thing that I always say in my sales calls: I'm not going to be your marketing slave.
Hmm.
So those things are for me, like, it's, yeah, it's more practical. I haven't even written it down in values yet, but it's, if I have this feeling like, oh, this is gonna be hard, this is gonna be toxic, some narcissist sort of red flags, I'm out. Like, I'd rather not go into business. So yeah, I'm curious though, what about you? Like, what is this something for you that you're like, this is like a no go, like non-negotiable, like, get out of my space if this happens in your work environment?
I think it's similar. So I was a CEO of startups for about 10 years leading up to the pandemic. Initially just I was younger starting them, some of them failed, and then kind of in the 4 years leading up to the pandemic, I started a digital health company that I actually sold about 2 weeks before the news came out of Wuhan that there was a pandemic. So it was a strange time in 2020. But the point is, basically, the 2010s, I was a CEO, and I have since then I've done different things. I've consulted. I've kind of moved on from those kinds of startups. But the thing I always take with me is, like, it's very hard or impossible for me to be someone's junior employee or even intermediate employee. So I do work with clients, and in some cases I have clients and quasi bosses, just in terms of, like, I owe work to people, or I owe results
Hmm.
to people. But as soon as it becomes micromanaging, it's almost like an extremist personality of, like, even things that are probably legitimate, I don't do well with. Like, just in terms of, like, when I should work, and
Yeah.
how I should do things. It's fully remote, fully my own time, fully. I'll do what I say, but I'll do it the way I want. And I think that that's not necessarily something I think everyone should be like. I think if you're 20 and you just started at McKinsey or you just started at Goldman Sachs, you will get fired if you act like that. But if
Mhm.
you are a freelancer and you're a freelance designer or marketer, you can be any age, and anyone can be any age. So it's context dependent. I'm not saying, like, this is the right approach for anyone, but I'm just borderline, like, psychopathically independent in not being able to be directed to do things a certain way, even if
Mhm.
I can collaborate with someone on what to do. So any hint of that, I'll just stop that project and leave.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a good distinguish that you made between, like, being in a remote position, or in any position, or if you're working for yourself. Like, I think that there always needs to be, like, flexibility and conversation. Like, I don't know, even if there's things in the project not going well, like, we should still be able to talk about it, but it's more the delivery of it as well, right? But yeah, like, if you
Hmm.
are in a position, if maybe it's your first client, maybe not be too demanding, or like, or if it's your first job, like, like also respect where people are at. I think this is for me as a girl that, I mean, I'm 33. If I would tell you I'm 22, you would probably believe it as well. It's just the moment I open up my mouth and I say where I am in my life that people think, oh, wait, she might be a little bit older than I thought. So also try to respect the journey that people go through. It's not about age, like you're more because you're older, but if you have someone in front of you that has, run businesses, run departments, is really epic stuff. Like, maybe then like learn, ask questions, be curious instead of being like, here are my boundaries.
Yeah, well, the world has undergone a bit of a flip in the last, I'd say, 30 years or 25 years, where if you go back to the 20th century, back to the 90s, back earlier, it was often that people who are 50 and 60 and 70 truly were the ones that had the experience to run a factory or to run a
Mhm.
government or to run an ambassador's house. And with all of the complexities of the decades of wisdom, it really was that people with white hair knew more about what they were doing than people who were 25. And that's just not true anymore because of how quickly the internet allows people to learn information. So even by like 2010, it was true that a 23-year-old might literally know more something about an area of the world than someone who's been in it for decades, just because things start to move faster. And I think not everyone over 40 or 50 or whatever of any age has truly adapted to that. And I
Mm.
honestly think we're going to see it get even more extreme. Like we're going to see 14-year-olds that learn how to become YouTubers and are millionaires by 15. And we're going to have to learn how to deal with, like, yeah, they figured out some stuff that people don't figure out their entire life, and they do it really
Yeah.
young, and it's going to get super extreme over the next couple of years. And so we're going to have to adjust, what we think about wisdom and respect and experience. Experience is good, but there's going to be young people, really young people, doing really
Yeah.
well really quickly,
But it
more and more.
exactly, and it's also like it's not even experience in like, oh, like X amount of years experience. It's more like, can you like show up with that experience? Like if you became an expert in something in a really short amount of time and you deliver results, like yeah, I really wouldn't care what someone's age is. Like the other day I was talking with someone to start a new project in my business, and I don't know how to do it. And this person knows way better how to do it, how operationally. So yeah, I have the strategic vision, obviously. But I mean, if this person tells me like, do it, we're gonna do it X, Y, and Z. Yeah, I'm not gonna be like, oh no, this is my agency, my way. No, it's like, yeah, cool, you know something better than I do. Awesome. Let's put our heads together and make it epic. So it's also I think a lot showing up with respect also for that someone else can be yeah, more knowledgeable or more experienced, or just knows more. I think it's maybe a bit of an ego thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've definitely I probably had an ego at some points and run into big egos in the course of the last 10 years, and that does get in the way. I was just wondering, the so you are a digital nomad, you are a marketer, but you're also a content creator and podcaster. When did that layer of deciding I want to podcast and create about my journey, when did that come into the picture in the last 5 years?
So that actually came into picture because I didn't know how to nomad. So
Yeah.
in the very,
You're
very,
like,
very early days, I
what is
was
this
like,
electrical plug and why doesn't it fit into this thing? What do I need, an adapter?
no, it's like it's so stupid. So this is what I meant. I think I should have taken a course or something, not how to become a nomad, but probably a course like how to become a freelancer or a VA, because I had no clue what I was doing. I just left my work. I was like confused. I was going for remote jobs actually, and then one time I was working with a company for 5 weeks. Nomad failure for anyone. And then I was like, we didn't never sign a contract. They told me like, yeah, it's coming, and then bomb, like nothing happened. And then I worked basically for free for 5 weeks, and then they ghosted me. So basically what happened was that I was like, how do these people do it? Like, yes, I understand you open up your
Mhm.
laptop, but then what happens then? And how do you pick your new location? And how do you go about like health insurance? Like all these sort of like day-to-day practical things. So I called it Digital Nomads Daily. So I was interviewing people on video. It was a lot of fun, super unprofessional, but a lot of fun. Um, I did like community events, so all of that also came from my work before. And yeah, I had like founders dinners and all kinds of stuff, so it was really nice. But it was not a business; it was more like collecting information from real people, real stories. But it was not a business. And
Mhm.
then a few years later, sadly, so I stopped because I was just focusing on other things for a while. And then a few years later, I lost my personal Instagram account. And then I lost
You
so many
lost it.
contacts.
What
Yeah,
what's
like
you
I was
you were
walking in the
kicked out of
streets
it
and
by you forgot your
yeah,
password, or you were kicked out of it?
I have no clue what happened. It's
It
just one day it
it
just
just
didn't exist,
it's gone.
just disappeared. And
Wow.
then you go into that customer support thing where you have to take a photo of yourself with your account and stuff, and then that doesn't work.
Mhm.
And it was just a private account, but I lost a lot of my travel contacts. So then I opened the Digital Nomads Daily Instagram, where still were a lot of people there, and that's at one point I was like, I want to do a project again. Like financially, I was stable. I was in a job. Like I was just like,
Mhm.
let's go for it. And then I started the podcast. So that's 2 years ago, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit shorter, I think. So yeah, and then I started the podcast and just continuing that mission. Like asking people how do you do it and talk about the not so sexy things. So this podcast, Digital Nomads Daily, it's actually not so much about me, although I really love talking about entrepreneurship. So yeah, I also get listeners get excited about that. But it's about other people, like how are they doing it, like what's happening in their life. And sometimes we interview two people or one people at twice because or one person twice because our journey is so dynamic.
Yeah.
So one time someone has a
Yeah.
boyfriend, the other time not, or like it's just all these different things always happening. So
A
yeah.
lot of people start podcasts and they do 11 episodes and quit. You've managed to do over, is it over, it's hundreds, right? Or over 100, 150? I can't remember what the number was on the last one I listened to.
Yeah,
But there's three
yeah, it's like
digits. There's three digits.
yeah, yeah.
And so, what do you think kept you going? Where many, many people start a digital nomad podcast and give up 9 weeks later, you didn't, you haven't, and you've continued. And then, did you ever have a moment where you felt like, "Wow, this is a lot of work to do, and it's not like a full business, but it's also a lot of work. I maybe I'll
Hmm.
take a break, or maybe I'll rethink this." Has it been pretty consistent the whole time, or have you had ebbs and flows of your motivation or your excitement or even your strategy for why you're doing it?
Yeah, this is such a loaded question. Also, because this is mainly why I
Yeah.
started my agency, right?
Mhm.
What I think in general people do when they start their content creation journey, they they forget one very important step, and that is choosing channels that actually feel natural to you. There's so many people that are like, oh, this is working. I see this person making a shit ton of money with it. Can I say shit? Sorry. I'm
Yeah.
making a
It's
lot,
it's
a
half
lot of
your
money.
podcast. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, on my podcast, we
Yeah.
can say everything.
Yeah.
No, not everything, but we can curse.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
and that's but, oh yeah. So what? So people choose something because it looks great or there's some sort of opportunity. But what people forget is like to ask them, like, hey, can I do this 100 times or 1,000 times, and can I then still show up? So when I started my podcast, I did bi-weekly episodes.
Mhm.
So that's how we started. And then once we felt comfortable, I say we because I invest also in my podcast with like having people helping me out with editing, even though I can do it myself. Um, then I started to do it weekly. And then actually, I wanted to do it twice a week, but then at the same time, I was writing a book, Digital Nomads with Confidence, which talks a lot about these practical things. And then I was like, when the book was published and stuff, we were like, okay, let's now go to 2 times a week. We're comfortable. And I did that for a while, and that was the moment I got exhausted. I wasn't liking
Mhm.
it anymore. This was at the same time I quit my job when I was trying to switch careers, and I also realized I love D&D Digital Nomads Daily, but it's not a job. It's like my connector, it's my fun, it's my creative outlet. It's so much more than maybe it's not even an actual business. So I stopped the monetization process, as in I'm earning with my platform, but it's not my main business. And I really started to relook at things like, wait, do I really want to post 2 times a week? Is that the thing? And then I decided no, so we do once a week. Then during the breakup with my ex, I had a little break because at one point I just couldn't record, and I have also always stuff in the bank, but I didn't. So then I was like, I can take a little break. It's no problem. And now we're doing weekly. It's fun. I love it. I have solo episodes and we have interviews, and that is the perfect pace for me. So I think, in short, it's a journey. Don't overdo it. Like, see how it feels. Can you really show up consistently? And if you start thinking like, oh, marketing, or sorry, this thing becomes a chore, it might not be the right platform or the frequency or what format or whatever it is. And I think that what I do also in my agency, I always talk with my clients about this. We never ever run strategies that don't feel comfortable for them or that they cannot do in the long run. It's like, if you only can commit to 5 or 10 times, maybe you want to skip the investment for it. But yeah, that's why it's loaded. It's a long answer, sorry.
I listened to one of your latest episodes about outsourcing and how you have been recently delving more into getting more comfortable with outsourcing and the time that it frees up. And the format of that episode was not a guest. You were, from my point of view as the listener, I was turning it on and you were giving, I don't know, a 40-minute monologue. Is that the kind of thing where you've gotten to the point where that's just one take? Or is that a bunch of things that you've carefully edited so that it sounds like it's one take? I'm just curious because I've mostly done guests. I've maybe done one or two
Hmm.
half-hour monologues, and I want to experiment with that more. But I'm just curious, like, what's the behind the scenes on the half hour of talking where there's no guest? Is that more difficult than a guest, or not?
Definitely not more difficult. I love both. It's this is why podcasting is this is why podcasting is so great for me. You can already notice it. It's so hard for me to just say, yes, I've been nomading for 5 years. Like, I cannot, like, it, I have like all these stories and background and information, and it's small thingies that I think, hey, here are details that you also need to know, because it's not like black and white. So doing a monologue like that is actually quite easy. And what happens behind the scenes is that I have a bullet point of what I want to say in that episode. Like, what are the main things that we talk about. So this episode specifically was focused on two things. It was like the mindset of outsourcing, but also like, then how do you do that? And I could have split it up in 2 episodes, but then I don't know, that's not my vibe. And then because I have this outline for in front of me, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this moment. And I'm just start like telling stories and all of that. So it's one go, and my editor doesn't cut really. Sometimes I'm going like, and then I tell her like, okay, maybe we take this part out. I will go from here. But there's, yeah, no, if there's a talk marathon, I would probably be the winner.
Well, that's well suited for being on a podcast, or doing those kinds of monologue is the wrong word. It's just a one person podcast episode. Um, how is it for you being a nomad and doing the podcast with, and this is very tactical and technical, but like equipment? I find like I'm in a place right now where I'm in the same place in my apartment, and I've got like dual monitors and a mic. I'm pretty flexible, and I can leave all that behind and just take a laptop somewhere. But do you have a certain microphone you bring and a way to do things if you're just somewhere where you are not at an office? You're not at your home office. You're just in Vienna or you're in Brazil. How do you
Yeah,
handle the sound stuff?
that's a good question. So, that's been a journey. So in the beginning, I was still like, recording on Zoom because I wasn't really sure if this was even going to work. So before I started like investing deeply in things, like software and stuff, I was just using Zoom. In terms of mic, I've always recorded with this one, which is the Blue Yeti.
Hmm.
Um, and then
A
this one
rather
is
famous
quite
one.
big.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's big, it's heavy, it's not, but that's the one I got, and I didn't realize. Oh, maybe I can like. So this is what I mean. Sometimes I'm a bit of a late bloomer with these things because I don't really like. I like it. I'm comfortable. Yeah, it's the size of a shoe, but hey, I don't own a lot, and it fit in my suitcase. I had to maybe take like a. I had to replace one shorts for my jetty. Like that's usually how I go. If I take something new in the suitcase, I need to take something out. So that's what I've been traveling with. Then yeah, I my podcast is audio, and then people tell me, yeah, you need to do videos
You're
and blah
saying
blah
your
blah.
podcast is audio, like as in audio, but not necessarily video. Is that what you mean? Like,
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I want to change that. But that is a different story. But then people are like, yeah, you need to do video, blah blah blah. I was like, I don't need to do anything like that. Like
Yeah.
it becomes
Yeah.
like more complicated in
You
my
get
head.
that thing where you're doing your podcast, it's very professional. You have an episode per week. The audio is great, the editing's great. You get, Logic Pro, everything. And then someone's like, "You need to do more like short form tech talks on video." And like it's like, "Oh, but
Yeah.
I want to nail the audio first." And so I shouldn't make fun of that because we're experimenting with getting into short form TikToks and video, but it is kind of like this thing where you have to I find you have to filter the feedback because people might just say that because they're on autopilot. Like, well, you have to
Yeah,
do
yeah, yeah.
video, and it's like, well, maybe I have 200 very hardcore fans that download the episode on audio, and that's all they want, and that's fine. They don't know they don't know everything about me, so
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Here's what it is. Like to this point, think about this when people say that. Who is saying this? Do they know your business? Do they know why? Like not even like your actual business, but do they know your motivations? Like where are they coming from? That's one thing. Second thing is it's like, wait, why did you actually started this? Like if you become uncomfortable with video because you're too self-conscious and all that stuff, like why would you even take the whole train of going on TikTok? If that's not your natural vibe. I love people on TikTok, but I love it when they're good. And
Hmm.
I know I'm not like, I'm good with this stuff, but not with like, ugh. So this is the thing, like
Yeah.
the one thing
Yeah.
that I always I have so many clients that come to me, we need to create a course or we need to do this. And then I'm like, yeah, okay, let's go back to the business model and see where that fits and what your personality is. Can you show up? Does it match your lifestyle? So to the audio point, I had people telling me, I can hear your cat on the background. I'm like, yeah, then listen to another podcast. I have a cat. I'm not gonna like throw him in the bin. Like I don't have cat anymore now, but like
Hmm.
before when I was nomading with my ex, we had two cats, and sometimes King Chai was there, meow meow. It's fine.
Yeah.
Or they're like,
I've got
it's
a
not
cat beside me right
perfect.
now.
I saw it, so cute. Or people are like, yeah, it's not perfect audio. I'm like, yeah, it's not a studio podcast. That's just not what my podcast is. So if you're bothered with that, it's all good. Hello, big friend. What's the name of your cat? Oh my god, I love cats.
That's my well, it is kind of my cat. My girlfriend's cat Willow,
Willow.
and she likes to come sit beside me when I podcast, and she sometimes licks my elbow, but it doesn't really affect the audio. I just know she's there sometimes, so I have to multitask and like talk and also play defense.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. So,
yeah.
but because what I want to say, if you guys are gonna experiment with short format content and you love it, then do it. Like it's fun
Hmm.
if you can, if it doesn't start feeling like a chore. So, what is your format gonna be? Like, are you gonna go on TikTok? Would it be like LinkedIn stuff? Or I'm actually
I
curious.
think we want to have the plan is 50-50, so 50% me doing typical real or TikTok things, and 50% pulling from like so let's say this podcast was video, it would pull like my or your most profound or funny joke, and so it'd be half like clips from the long form, and then another half
Mhm.
would just be like I'm doing this for the TikTok. So for example, like, hey, here's 5 reasons why Brazil is underrated and everybody thinks they speak Spanish. One, and then you just do 30 seconds,
Mhm.
follow this TikTok to hear 3 more reasons why you probably need to make a trip down to Brazil. And if you're, things like that. But it's still, I
Cool.
mean, it's still really early. Like I don't know if I don't know if I'm like too old or like there was something where I thought I was talking so fast, and then there was just a bit of focus group feedback from Gen Z, and they're like, "Oh, he's not talking fast enough, and it's not starting fast enough." It's almost like the millennial pause. Like we think, okay, "Hi everyone, welcome to the podcast." And they're like, "You should be interrupting him in the TikTok. It should start in the middle of the sentence. It should be like, and that's what." And I'm like, "Oh, geez,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to do that. Maybe I will, but maybe I'll leave that to the 19-year-olds to kind of be insane, not insane. That's not fair. I mean, frenetic at a frenetic pace. I'm just
Yeah.
not sure if I want to go that fast. um, I want to sit back and talk, but maybe, there's also, thinking about growth. You can't be too precious. It's like, I'm not some newscaster from the 1990s that can sort of sit back and have a 2-hour conversation and just do that and not do anything else and not do any social and then expect to grow. You have to,
Yeah.
understand the rules of the game you're playing and sometimes do things that might seem corny because that's just the game, the way it works out on the field. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
It's still early.
Yeah, you can't also really decide all of that. Like this is also what I meant with my podcast, right? Like I didn't know I wanted to post once a week, twice a week. But like what kind of my vibe was. So I just started. Okay, I'm comfortable. I want to go one step further. So I think this is what it is also about. Like you sometimes need to push a little bit to get out of that comfort zone. Then at the same time, like, yeah, if it really feels unnatural and it becomes like a chore and you're like, ugh, I have to do this again, then it's
Hmm.
really time to have some self-reflection moments to figure out like, hey, how is this gonna work? Because people sense it if you're not enjoying it anymore. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the other things is watching the numbers go up every week. We're lucky to grow a bit every week, organically and linearly. The numbers do go up. The consistency works, and our podcast grows. But I sometimes wonder, like, you know, do I need to get out of a certain box where that's fine, but it's almost like you get too complacent where some provocative episode or piece of much more spiky or edgy content might
mhm.
cause something to go viral. Like it's not, there's nothing about what we're doing that is about going viral. It's just consistency and growth. And so I think about that sometimes. Like maybe I could come up with some crazy video that ranks a bunch of nomad countries, causes controversy, lights up the
Mhm.
comment section, and you know does 100 times the growth in 100th of the time. But I don't know. Is that selling out? What's the play there? But it'll be.
Depends
I'm
on the
going traveling
ROI,
next month. Yeah, I
right?
think.
Like
Yeah. Do
it's
you
really
ever think about like content that will pop or like I'm doing this intentionally because I think it's provocative to the algorithm or something?
No, actually, not really. So
Hmm.
this also goes into a question that I always ask people: Why are you doing what you're doing? Like, what is the true ROI of what you're doing? So when I started my podcast, the focus was monetization, but it's I didn't really enjoy like well kind of the content that you were describing. Like I'm not the kind of girl that's going to be here if I just don't is I don't know, it's just not me. So also when we started monetizing, which we did slightly, it was difficult. Like I didn't like the influencing stuff with brands, and it was just like I experimented with it and I noticed that it wasn't my vibe. But really what is my vibe is just have conversations with people, make connections, be like inspiring to people with authenticity and also vulnerability. So honestly, the episodes that work really, really well for my podcast when we're super practical and when we show up with vulnerability, it's not the like sexy, like, oh, and I don't have titles. Here's how this person made money, like 10K in 10 days, because I don't believe in that. Like, there's always seeds planted. So I don't do like yeah, I don't know how, if it's fair to say this, but kind of like the Gary V kind of vibes where you have like that super punchy content. But that is because my ROI is not monetizing my podcast. So different rules with different when you play different games, right? So yeah, it
Mhm.
would probably hurt my business and my brand if I start doing that.
Yeah, I would say that's a great framework for thinking about it, and I would say the ROI or the goal, I like to, I like to set goals that are achievable in sort of a year, and that might be a platform for the next goal, but almost not to have a 5-year vision of this is where it needs to be, but
Hmm.
to have a solid short-term vision and a open-minded long-term vision. And the short-term vision is I would like to set a goal. I have set a goal for myself for the podcast to build 1,000 fans, or you can call them listeners or audience. They don't have to be fans like they're screaming at a concert, but
Not
1,000
like
people
Curtis,
in
Curtis,
a
bring me
Curtis,
Curtis,
play my favorite song. Curtis. Well, I want to see you after the show. The if only podcasting were like that. I mean, maybe that's what Twitch is like, where you have the chat going, and everybody's like, the chat's just going. But podcasting, like it's like talking into the void. It's talking to no one. No one is cheering. You're sitting editing sound waves and like EQing and compressing a sound wave. Nobody's cheering. Nobody cares. Completely in your headphones, like alone in a cave, and then you like upload it to the podcast feed, and you see some numbers and that kind of thing. But I think podcasting alone is the opposite of a rock concert. um, but really, just I mean, I don't think of it like a hobby. It's not just for fun. It's to build
Hmm.
that audience, and I hope it's like a two-way thing. Like I want to be fans of them too, and that kind of thing, and yelling at their concert. Excuse me. And then use that as like really as a platform for networking. If people are interested in the future of entrepreneurship, the future of work, remote work, digital nomadism, there's a lot of people that may indeed want to work on a project together for
Hmm.
for financial ROI, or meet up in a city, or know an investor and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I've already met like VCs and clients and collaborators from doing the podcast. So I look at I do have a specific goal, like build up, 1,000 people. I'm not there yet, but seeing like even if I don't do any marketing, it's in the feed of 1,000 people that download it, and there's sort of a dedicated audience. And from there, I'm not um, predicting what will happen from that, but I know that that's a way to make your own luck. Like once you create that kind of thing, things will happen, and I'm not trying to be too predeterministic about what that will lead to. And we'll see how quickly we can get there. I mean, it might be 6 months, it might be 2 years to get to that level. But it goes up every week, and that's kind of the thing that's one of the things that keeps me going. I think
Yeah.
I wouldn't keep doing it forever if it's like not working. If it goes down every week, then I might say, hey, you try something, it doesn't work. Luckily, we're on the way up. So
Yeah, that's a good
yeah.
way to approach it, man. Like for me, when I have an episode about what my ROI is. I'm not sure which number it is, but it's somewhere above 80 or something probably. But I talk
Hmm.
about that. Like what is the true ROI of my podcast? And what I realize is that in the beginning I got not so many listeners, like maybe 100, maybe 200 and stuff like that, and now like my episode numbers are actually quite high. And when I tell that to people, they're like, yeah, you need to monetize. And I'm like, oh no, like that's not my business, I run an agency. And
Yeah.
people are very strong with that once I say the numbers, but it's just like, yeah, it's just not my vibe. But then when the really, really true ROI actually came also when those numbers were low, because looking at my network right now, it's incredible. Like I said no to a lot of deals this year, but I was able to say no because I also was able to say yes to a lot of deals, you know? And I do
Hmm.
projects with clients and people that I am so invested in, like with my head, emotionally, with my soul, sometimes a bit more than the other. And that doesn't, you don't have to have an over monetized podcast to achieve that. Like, you know, the true value of everything is making connections. So, yeah. And then, you know, so keep going. That's the thing. And also with the downloads, I was obsessed with it. Like I was like, oh damn, and now I let it go, and it's
Yeah. Wake up in the
actually
morning and like refresh, refresh to see. on a daily basis.
Making reports, and I was so, because I needed to show numbers for the brands. But then I realized, even if my numbers are really good for like how fast and we did everything, a lot of brands in the space are still like, like, yeah, but I need it, like the money wasn't so great. And I started to realize that as well, like I need to go into not like the 10 or 20, 30, 40 thousands of downloads. No, I need to go in the millions. It takes people like Jenna Kutcher, took them also like 5 6 years to actually get to that number. I think,
Hmm.
I'm not sure it's 5 6 years, but it's like really long. It's not like, oh, year two of your podcast, like, yeah, maybe if you're already famous or something in the space. But yeah, sorry again,
Do
super
you
long
do you
answer.
listen do you listen to other digital nomad and remote work podcasts? Do you consume content in the space?
I have, but I'm currently in a moment where I am consuming content about building an agency that I can sell.
Right.
So my top, and also about human design, like really like understanding from like more like science level, and like high mindset and energies and whatever kind of levels to really tap into what is really my superpower, because now I have like figured it out, but I need to apply it in my business, which is
So you want
that's
to build
not.
up your agency, streamline it a bit so maybe it's sellable in the sense like it has predictable systems and growth, and then your aim is to sell it in some time frame in the next in the medium term or long
Yes,
term.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I have a 3 year build plan, and it's like I think 1 to 2 years selling part, because selling takes preparation as well, right? So I'm building the business with that mindset, and the reason why I want to do that is that I want to create my true financial freedom and life freedom by helping other people. So if I can build a company that is sellable, then I have all the
Hmm.
freedom in the world to build my next company or impact or whatever that's going to be, to really really make bigger things. I think that small impacts are great, like really sustainable growth, but that I want to do something that, like, I don't know, I want to buy like a foster home or something, or like I want to do something that has so much more impact on a larger group of people, and with $10 a month it's just not going to work.
What
So
would you do now if you sold your agency for $12 million next month? What do you think is the thing you would do in January after you relaxed and recovered for a couple of weeks?
I would go property hunting, which could probably
Hmm.
mean like a whole village or something.
Yeah.
Buy that, have people working with me to like make that friendly for entrepreneurs, remote workers, creatives, anyone that wants to also have an impact, but maybe not has the financial resources to rent a space, to, test their product, their retreat, like something like that. And then just, yeah, just buy it, build it, and then do that. And then I would
Do you
probably
follow
also.
the network state cities or like the digital nomad villages, and then the some of the newer um, network states like Plumia from Safety Wing or Prospera in Honduras? Do you follow those kinds of new communities? And it sounds like yours is a little bit more like I don't know, like more altruistic and less. Some of these are like libertarian. They're like, we want to get out of the, want to get away from American taxes and create a libertarian community somewhere. So they have a slightly different philosophy. But do you follow those kinds of communities? If this might be the thing that you do, if you sold for 10 million.
Yes, like I follow those community, like I not that every day, but I do follow
Hmm.
like a bit in the space to see what's going on. I think what especially the what Safety Wing is doing, I think that's really awesome. Like they have a very cool vision, and I definitely share that. For me it's not really, it's for me it's purely empowering others. I think that my true zone is really to give people space to allow who they are or who they want to become, and have space for that growth. And what I see in the entrepreneurial world, like whether you're freelancing or your side hustle or starting a job, or maybe you want to like practice dancing and you've never done it and you don't, like, just anything that, if you want to get out of your comfort zone, getting to those resources is such a long path on itself. So for me it's all about creating a space where other people can teach other people how to get out of their comfort zone. But it doesn't have to be like, oh, freedom naked community. It doesn't have to be a school. It needs to be something that is dynamic and alive, and that is like, yeah, it's not clear in my head, but I it's clear in my heart. So,
I like that
sea
saying.
level
I
goals,
I
just to
like that saying.
kind of like, yeah, I don't know how to house, yeah.
This hypothetical project where you have an inspiring and empowering village. You're a nomad. You've been around to different places. Where in the world are some of the top candidates for a project like this? Where have you been that you just fell in love with and would love to start a community?
I would love to do that in Brazil. I think that is very close to my heart. I mean, I've lived there for a long time. I think Brazil has a lot of good opportunity. But honestly, I this is so hard because I have traveled, but I'm a bit of a slow mad. So I'm not the girl that it's like, actually this summer I did a bit more like fast travel. Man, it's hard to build a business doing that. I'm exhausted. So I don't know the space, like the place yet, but I would probably go for something where also the local community can really like where it's not going to be a digital nomad invasion, but it's really something that also then empowers local communities. So it's, yeah, it's not going to be in the Netherlands, like that's for sure.
I don't know why I'm laughing or why it wouldn't be, but that sounds.
I'm Dutch,
I
but it's
believe you.
like there's
Yeah.
no space. The people that good there. No, but I
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know, but it would be something, a place where it's, yeah. Oh, it's so hard. The world is so large. Oh my god.
Well, there's lots of places in Brazil, I think, that are not discovered by a bunch of nomads. It's still, hundreds of millions of people that are Brazilian, but it's not like everyone's coming to Brazil. There's a few little projects in Pipa and Florianopolis,
Hmm.
but it's still like there's still lots of places you could start a new community in Brazil. I don't know. I think we're on the hour. It's your. We booked with you. We're hitting the time. Do we? Are we about to hit the end here? Any last words?
Yeah, well, actually, wait, maybe we should cut this out because I didn't really ask any questions for to you, like not so much. So for me, for my podcast, it would be way better if we just have like you on the podcast.
Sure. Well, let's
Because I
do it.
feel like it
I'll.
was a lot of me, so it's kind of like that's just, I yeah, like if it's a solo episode, I tell the people, hey, this is just Nina today. But if it's
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah.
with someone else, I'm not going to be the one that's doing the most of the
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah. No, we could. Let's do a separate session if you'll have
Yeah,
me on your podcast.
yeah,
I'm
I want.
happy to join. Yeah.
Okay, so do you want, so I don't know how you want to do this with the editing, but if we can just say like, hey, we just actually decided that you're gonna come on my podcast, like I'm happy to just say it like that if you want to keep that in the episode, okay. So do you want to do like the ending as how you always do it, and then you just cut this little piece that we just chatted out,
Uh, yeah, sure.
or
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We'll just keep it in. The music is gonna play over this right now, and that's it. You're hearing it right now, and we're fading out, and that's it. It's all good.